We're now going to go into a deeper understanding of change resistance. Up until now, we focused primarily on the behaviors exhibited in resistance, and we're now going to shift to the psychological drivers of those behaviors. The things that people often do subconsciously. We run on autopilot. Think about the habits that we do on a daily basis. We don't think about most of what we do because if we did, it'd be too hard. When we learn something, it becomes habitual so that we don't have to focus on it as much. We don't have to consciously focus on it. We subconsciously focus on it, and it just happens. That is what we're going to be talking about here within the behaviors and what drives those behaviors, and how so often what we do is on autopilot. It just happens without us thinking about it. Change recipients, those impacted by the change, they're influenced by the psychological factors that then in turn drive their resistance. At the same time, change makers, we do what we know because we are also creatures of habit. So even while the change recipients are operating autopilot, so too are we. When we talk about the change recipients, this is the social influence of others, the social dynamics, the tolerance of risk, the tolerance of ambiguity. Is it easier to fight something out there versus change something in here? It is. Thereby, we resist what's out there versus having to change ourselves. And we rationalize these feelings. They're not bad or misdirected. They're just out there. We also have to rationalize our actions as managers. That resistance must be controlled. We need to overcome that natural habit. We operate on an autopilot as the prime targets for change consultants because they market the answer. To the extent that the consultants have an answer, we too often grab that answer without realizing that all change situations are a little bit different, and you need to be able to modify what may appear good in one situation as it will apply in this situation. The deeper understanding then of the change psychology that manifests itself as resistance. All change is personal. Emotion trumps logic. We often think about logic, rational thinking, and then deal with emotions as resistance. The core needs, though, when they're challenged, people will protect themselves. It's only natural to protect themselves. We think about protection from physical challenges. These are mental challenges that are attacking them. We also have the core needs that are often hidden. They're hidden from ourselves also unless we consciously focus on these. There's also a series of cross-cultural needs that are culturally embedded, but they may be slightly varied by local dominance. What I'm going to be talking about are the 6 core psychological needs that manifest themselves in various ways as change resistance. They cross cultures, but each culture may have a slight variation in which is more dominant. So we're going to focus on the 6, but you will have to evaluate within your nationalistic culture as well as your organization culture which may be more dominant than others in driving resistance. But change, again, starts with the change leader. Our subconscious drivers are very similar. So we need to think about not only the change recipients, but how those core needs apply to us and what we're doing in the change process itself. So the core needs must align with the change plan. The needs then, first two are associated with the training and communication. These are the ones we think about routinely. The communication of needs, the training for competence. So we have then is the competence, feeling capable. This is where you train people. The feeling of need for order and control, things that are predictable, structured, no surprises. Communication is directed toward this area. These two are well accepted and understood and are almost by default included in most change plans. The next four are not necessarily so well accepted. The third and fourth really involve the change management, the methodology employed. How you include and connect people. People need to feel that they're part of something. They are involved with what is happening. They're not excluded and they're not isolated, but they are connected in the work process as well as the decision-making process. There's also the power structure. This is the direct power that the influencer has over others and the outcome, but there's also the indirect, the personal powers that we all have in our competencies, our knowledge, our relationships, and how that influences the decision-making process itself. These two are incorporated in how we plan the process or the methodology for the change initiative. The last two are associated with the empathy that we have toward others, as well as the identity that people have of themselves. What is their role and how do others see them? This involves the security. Are they emotionally safe without the threat? This is beyond physical threat, but mental and psychological threat. We also have, this is very important, the sixth is the justice and the fairness. They're feeling that they're being treated equal to others, that there's minimal political impact and no nepotism or favoritism involved, and that they have an equal right with anyone else in the organization in having a say on what's best for the organization. These six core psychological needs then drive resistance if not met. So let's move from autopilot to explicit consciousness, making these six core psychological needs explicit in how we structure our approach to change and the change objective itself. We're conditioned to hide our feelings. We are especially conditioned that way in business, in that we are down to business, we're not emotional, we're not flighty, and we move our inner feelings to the side. We hide them from others, and to the extent that we have these feelings, we may blame something that is outside of our control, because otherwise we would have to take blame ourselves. We hide our feelings, and we do this naturally. We're also culturally reinforced. The culture we live in is like the air we breathe. People say, get out of the box, see things differently. It's hard to get out of the box when all you see is the inside of the box. There is no outside of the box. We say, just get over it, move on. Managers can overcome any resistance. That feeling is culturally reinforced by everything we do and the interactions we have with others. That is the autopilot default that we need to explicitly recognize and move away from. We also need to acknowledge the resistance in the planning process. Look at where the organization is going, how we move through that process, and how we enable the organization. This gets back to change leadership, change management, change enablement. We're also needing to take a step back away from the change objective and understand how that objective impacts the people and the existing processes. What is really being changed? What are the small things we may be overlooking that are changed? And more importantly, how does that desired change have a ripple effect? The push down pop up. You push down one problem. What's going to pop up? This is the mitigation of the objective through unintended consequences elsewhere in the organization. We also need to recognize the transition that people go through for their resistance and allow for that in the process itself. Allow people to express their feelings, actively listen, so that you really get an understanding. Are they really struggling with it personally, or are they trying to tell you something that you're overlooking? This gets to the core issue of go slow early to go fast later. We want to do the change process quickly because we want to solve a pain point. And the change team has struggled with the pain for a long time, and they developed a plan. They're ready to go quickly. They're in stage 4 of change. They want action. They're overlooking the first 3 stages that people need to progress through. And if you progress too quickly through those changes, you're going to develop resistance. Taking the time early to go through the work needed to move people through the first 3 stages of change will allow you to go quicker later by having less resistance. You go too quick early, you're going to go slow later. So think, go slow early, go fast later. What are the unseen factors that are driving resistance? Use as a template the slides for this presentation as a checklist of those 6 psychological factors. Are you recognizing them in your change plan? And to what extent are you explicitly building them into the change objective and the change methodology to think about how you can reduce the impact or the frequency of resistance later? Go slow early, go fast later.